Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The soft melody of violins filled the grand ballroom as crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow across the sea of guests. Dominic Calloway adjusted his black bow tie, scanning the reception with sharp eyes that missed nothing. 33 years old, and at the peak of his career, Dom had built his empire from scratch, turning a small tech startup into a multi-million-dollar company through sheer grit and unwavering determination. Tonight was supposed to be the pinnacle of his personal life, his wedding day to Brielle Maddox, now Brielle Calloway, the woman who had captured his heart with her brilliant smile and keen intellect. The woman who now danced in the arms of another man. Dom's jaw tightened as he watched Brielle and her brother Silas sway to the music, their bodies too close, too familiar. Something twisted in his gut, the same instinct that had saved his business countless times, now screaming warnings about his personal life. Silas leaned in, whispering into Brielle's ear. Even from across the room, Dom could see the way her eyes lit up, the way her fingers lingered on Silas's shoulder a beat too long. The champagne in Dom's hand suddenly tasted bitter. Jace Holloway, Dom's oldest friend and business partner, appeared at his side. "Everything all right, man? You look like you're about to put a hole through that glass." Dom relaxed his grip slightly. "Just admiring my bride and her devoted brother." Jace followed his gaze, his expression darkening. "They've always been close. Too close," Dom muttered, setting down his untouched champagne. "But tonight, we'll find out exactly how close." "Dom, what are you planning?" Jace's voice lowered with concern. "The truth, Jace. I'm planning the truth." Dom straightened his shoulders and stepped toward the stage where the band played. The weight of the USB drive in his pocket felt like lead. 3 months of suspicion had led to 2 weeks of private investigation. What he discovered had nearly broken him, but Dom Calloway wasn't a man who broke easily. He was a man who calculated, who planned, and who struck when the moment was right. The moment was now. He nodded to the tech assistant he'd hired specifically for tonight, then took the microphone from its stand. The music faded. Hundreds of eyes turned to him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dom's voice resonated through the ballroom, smooth and controlled. "I want to thank everyone for sharing this special day with Brielle and me." Across the room, Brielle stepped away from Silas, her white gown shimmering under the lights as she moved toward the front of the crowd. Her smile, the same smile that had once seemed so genuine, now looked like nothing more than a well-rehearsed act. "Marriage is built on many things," Dom continued. "Trust, honesty, loyalty." He paused, allowing each word to hang in the air. "I've always believed that truth is the foundation of any lasting relationship." Confusion flickered across Brielle's face. "So in the spirit of truth, I'd like to show everyone the wedding gift my lovely wife and her brother gave me." Dom nodded again, and the large screens around the ballroom flickered to life. The crowd went silent as text messages appeared, intimate, explicit exchanges between Brielle and Silas spanning back years. Photos followed, stolen moments in hotel rooms, secret embraces, kissing in places siblings should never kiss. Finally, a voicemail played through the speakers. "Silas, baby, I miss you. Dom's away on business again. Come over. I need you. No one will ever know. I'll always be yours, no matter whose ring I wear." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Brielle's mother covered her mouth in horror. Her father's face hardened to stone. Brielle stood frozen, her face drained of color. Silas pushed through the stunned guests toward Dom, fury blazing in his eyes. Dom turned back to the microphone, his voice ice cold. "I think that covers the something old part of the wedding tradition. The affair has apparently been going on for quite some time. Turn it off." Brielle finally found her voice, running toward the stage. "Dom, please. This isn't what you think." Dom held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. "Explain? You mean lie?" "No, Brielle. You had plenty of time for that. Now, let everyone hear the truth." Silas reached the front of the crowd, lunging toward the stage, but Jace stepped between them, planting a firm hand on Silas's chest. "You don't want to do that, buddy," Jace warned, his voice low but threatening. Dom stepped down from the stage, addressing the shocked guest directly. My beautiful bride and her beloved brother have been more than just family for years. And guess what? I found out just in time. Silas shoved Jace aside and charged at Dom. But two security guards hired specifically for this possibility intercepted him, restraining his arms. "Let go of me!" Silas roared, struggling against their grip. Dom walked up to him, never breaking eye contact. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out? That I wouldn't notice how you looked at her? How she always took your calls, no matter what time? How convenient that your business trips always aligned with hers." Silas spat at Dom's feet. "You never deserved her." "Apparently, neither of us deserved each other," Dom replied coldly, turning back to face the crowd that Brielle's family sat at the front table, faces rigid with shock and humiliation. Nolan Maddox, Brielle's father and CEO of one of the largest investment firms in New York, clenched his fist around a crystal glass. His wife, Vanessa, stared straight ahead, her society smile cracked but still in place. "Oh, and about our prenup," Dom's voice cut through the murmurs. "It's bulletproof. Brielle, you walk away with nothing. No house, no money, not even my last name. Infidelity clauses are quite effective, especially when properly documented." Brielle stumbled to a nearby chair, sinking into it as tears streaked her perfectly applied makeup. "Dom, please," she whispered. "We can talk about this privately." "Private?" Dom laughed without humor. "Like your private hotel meetings with Silas?" "No, Brielle. You don't get privacy anymore. Not after this." Across the room, guests began to file out, their embarrassed whispers filling the silence between Dom's words. Some remained, frozen by the spectacle unfolding before them. Silas had stopped struggling against the security guards, but his eyes burned with hatred. "This isn't over, Calloway." Dom stepped closer to him, voice low enough that only Silas, Brielle, and Jace could hear. "You're right. It's not over. This is just the beginning. I'm going to dismantle everything your family has built, piece by piece, starting with your reputation." He straightened, addressing security. "Get him out of here." As they dragged Silas toward the exit, Dom turned back to Brielle, who sat trembling in her chair. "Dom," her voice cracked. "We're done here," he said flatly. "I suggest you go with your brother. You've already broken every vow we made today." Brielle rose unsteadily to her feet. "You've humiliated me in front of everyone we know, and you betrayed me with your own brother," Dom countered. "I'd say we're still not even." She stepped toward him, mascara running down her cheeks. "What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? That it was a mistake? I don't want you to say anything, Brielle. I want you gone, just like the respect I had for you." With those words, Dom turned away from her, signaling to Jace that it was time to leave. Behind him, he could hear Brielle's sobs turn to angry protests, but he didn't look back. There was nothing left to see. The extravagant wedding reception had transformed into a scene of disarray. Half the guests had already fled, while others lingered in small clusters, whispering behind raised hands. Waiters stood awkwardly with trays of untouched champagne, unsure whether to continue service or disappear into the kitchen. Dom strode through the chaos with Jace at his side, accepting supportive nods from the few friends brave enough to acknowledge him. His parents had left after quietly embracing him, his father's firm grip on his shoulder, conveying both support and concern. They knew their son well enough to understand he needed space, not comfort. Mr. Calloway, a reporter who had somehow slipped past security, approached with a recorder extended. "Do you have any comment on what just?" Jace stepped between them. "Not tonight. The public has questions," the reporter persisted. "The Maddox family is well known in—" "I said not tonight," Jace repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. As they reached the hotel lobby, Dom's phone vibrated. A text from his head of security. Silas Maddox detained by hotel security. Made threats. Police notified. Instructions. Dom showed the message to Jace. Press charges, Jace suggested. Start the paper trail now. Dom nodded, typing his response. Press charges. Full security detail on me for the next 72 hours. Monitor the Maddox family. They pushed through the revolving doors into the cool night air. Dom loosened his bow tie, feeling as though he could finally breathe. Your car is ready, sir, the valet said, pointing to the black Aston Martin idling at the curb. Dom slipped him $100 bill. Thanks for the quick exit. Before they could reach the car, Brielle burst through the hotel doors. Her wedding dress gathered in her fists as she ran down the steps. Her face was a mess of tears and makeup, her carefully styled hair now falling in disarray around her shoulders. "Dom, you can't just walk away," she shouted, causing heads to turn on the busy street. Dom stopped but didn't turn around immediately. When he did, his expression was devoid of emotion. What part of "we're done" wasn't clear, Brielle. She reached for his arm, but he stepped back, avoiding her touch. "Please just listen. Silas, and it's complicated. It started years ago, before I met you. I've been trying to end it. Trying." Dom's eyebrow raised. "The voicemail I played was from 2 weeks ago. The hotel receipt in my pocket is from 3 days ago. Don't insult my intelligence on top of everything else." Brielle's pleading expression hardened. "You set me up. You knew, and you let me walk down that aisle." "Yes, I did," Dom admitted coldly. "I wanted everyone to see exactly who you are. No rumors, no he said, she said. Just the unvarnished truth." "You bastard," she hissed. "Says the woman sleeping with her brother," Dom retorted. Brielle flinched as if slapped. "He's my stepbrother, not my blood, and you know it. Does that make it better in your mind?" "Because it doesn't in anyone else's." A black SUV pulled up behind them, and Nolan and Vanessa Maddox emerged, their faces tight with controlled fury. Nolan, tall and imposing even at 60, approached Dom with measured steps. "You've made your point, Dominic," Nolan said, his voice low and dangerous. "This public spectacle was unnecessary." Dom turned to face his almost father-in-law. "Was it? Your daughter and son have been carrying on behind my back for years. Did you know Nolan? Or were you as blind as you wanted me to be?" Nolan's expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered briefly to Brielle. "Family matters should remain private. Privacy is a privilege, not a right," Dom replied. "And your family lost that privilege when they decided to make a fool of me." Vanessa stepped forward, her designer dress in perfect posture a stark contrast to her daughter's disheveled state. "Come, Brielle, we're leaving." Her voice was steel wrapped in silk, the voice of a woman accustomed to managing crises without breaking a sweat. Brielle shook her head. "No, Mom. I need to talk to Dom." "There's nothing to talk about," Dom said firmly. "The lawyers will contact you about the annulment. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't show up at my home or office. You can't just erase me." Brielle's voice broke. "Watch me." Dom turned to leave, but Nolan grabbed his arm. "You've embarrassed my family in front of the entire city. There will be consequences." Dom looked pointedly at Nolan's hand until he released his grip. "Threaten me again, and you'll discover that what happened tonight was me being merciful." Jay stepped closer, his presence a silent warning. "Mr. Maddox, I suggest you take your family and go. The police are already dealing with your son. You don't want to join him." Nolan's face flushed with anger, but Vanessa placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Nolan, not here. The press." The mention of press seemed to penetrate Nolan's anger. He straightened his tie, composing himself. "This isn't over, Calloway." "On that," Dom said with a cold smile, "we agree." He and Jace walked to the waiting car. As Dom slid into the driver's seat, he caught a final glimpse of Brielle in his rearview mirror, a crumpled white figure being ushered into the Maddox family SUV. Her dream wedding day transformed into a nightmare of her own making. The engine roared to life, and Dom pulled away from the curb, leaving behind the shattered remains of what should have been the happiest day of his life. "Where to?" Jace asked, breaking the tense silence. "The penthouse," Dom replied. "I need a drink that doesn't taste like betrayal." As they drove through the night-lit streets of New York, Dom's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. The initial adrenaline of his public revelation was wearing off, leaving behind a cold, calculating anger. "You know they won't let this go," Jace said, watching Dom's profile. "The Maddox family doesn't take humiliation well." Dom nodded. "I'm counting on it. What's the play here, Dom?" Dom paused at a red light, his eyes reflecting the crimson glow. "They think they know what I'm capable of. They have no idea." The light turned green, and Dom accelerated. "First, we protect the company. Issue a statement first thing tomorrow, something dignified about personal matters remaining separate from business operations. Then we go on offense. The information from a PI. That was just the surface. Dom cut in. I want everything. Every skeleton, every dirty deal, every secret the Maddox family has buried. Silas has always been their golden boy, protected and privileged. I want to know why. Jace nodded, pulling out his phone. I'll make some calls. And Jace, Dom added, as they pulled into the underground garage of his building, double the security at the office. The Maddox family plays dirty when cornered. Already on it. Dom parked the car and sat still for a moment, hands still gripping the wheel. The weight of the day settled on his shoulders. Not grief, he was beyond that now, but rage, cold and focused. You okay? Jace asked quietly. Dom released the wheel and turned to his friend. No, but I will be. Once I've made them pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment I wasted loving a woman who never existed. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent. When they stepped inside Dom's spacious apartment, the first thing he saw was a framed photo of Brielle smiling at him from the credenza. He picked it up, studied it for a moment, then hurled it against the wall. Glass shattered across the hardwood floor. Jace said nothing, simply walking to the bar and pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. To the death of illusions, Jace said, handing Dom a glass. Dom accepted it with a grim nod. And to what comes next? The city lights sparkled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a tapestry of possibilities and promises. For the first time in months, Dom felt clear-headed. The suspicion that had gnawed at him was confirmed, the doubt extinguished. All that remained was purpose, that he would dismantle the Maddox empire piece by piece, expose every secret, and ensure they felt the same humiliation and betrayal he had experienced. Not out of vengeance, but justice, Dom raised his glass. To the truth, no matter how ugly. They drank in silence, the night stretching before them like the opening chapter of a war point 1 week after the wedding disaster. Dom sat in his office on the 42nd floor of the Callaway Tech building, reviewing the preliminary reports his investigators had compiled. Outside his window, Manhattan stretched below, a concrete jungle where the strong devoured the weak. Dom had always understood this fundamental truth. It was how he had built his company from nothing, fighting and clawing his way to success against overwhelming odds. The Maddox family, by contrast, had been born into power, inheriting wealth and connections that opened doors without effort. Perhaps that explained their sense of entitlement, the belief that they could take whatever they wanted, including Dom's dignity, without consequences that a knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, Dom called, not looking up from the files. Jace entered, carrying a thick manila folder and a USB drive. The circles under his eyes suggested he'd been working through the night. You look terrible, Dom commented. Charming as always, Jace replied, dropping into the chair across from Dom's desk. But wait until you see what I found. He opened the folder and spread several documents across the polished surface. Silas Maddox has been a busy boy for years, and not just with his sister. Dom raised an eyebrow. Stepsister. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Jace shrugged. Point is, the golden boy of the Maddox family has quite a history one his daddy has spent millions covering up. Dom leaned forward. Start from the beginning. Okay, so we knew Silas was working at Maddox Investments, right? Daddy's right-hand man, heir to the throne, all that. Jace pointed to a document with a Maddox company letterhead. But what wasn't public knowledge was that 3 years ago, Silas was quietly removed from several key accounts after clients complained about irregularities. What kind of irregularities? The kind where client money disappears into offshore accounts. Jace slid forward a bank statement. The PI found this through a contact at First Manhattan Bank. Silas was skimming not huge amounts, but enough to fund a lifestyle beyond even what his trust fund provided. Dom examined the statement, noting the recurring transfers to a Cayman Islands account. And Nolan covered it up completely, paid back the clients, blamed a software glitch, and moved Silas to a position with less direct access to accounts. Dom nodded, processing this information. What else? Jace's expression darkened. This is where it gets interesting and disturbing. He pulled out a police report. 2 years ago, Silas was briefly detained after a woman claimed he assaulted her. Amanda Reeves, 27, former employee at Maddox Investments. Dom took the report, scanning the details. Charges dropped after Nolan personally visited the precinct with his army of lawyers. The woman suddenly recanted, then left town. Current whereabouts, unknown. Dom frowned. Unknown as in she disappeared. Dom, completely off the grid. Her family filed a missing persons report 3 weeks after the assault claim, but the police found nothing. Case went cold. The implication hung heavy in the air. Dom set down the report, a chill running down his spine. You think the Maddox family had something to do with her disappearance? I think it's a hell of a coincidence, Jace replied. And there's more. This isn't the first woman to vanish after getting too close to Silas. He placed a newspaper clipping on the desk. The headline read, "Search continues for missing fiancée of prominent businessman." Catherine Wilson, Silas's former fiancée, disappeared 5 years ago, 1 month before their wedding. Her car was found near the Hudson, but her body was never recovered. Police suspected suicide after finding a note, but her family insisted she would never take her own life. Dom studied the photograph of a smiling blonde woman. Let me guess Nolan made that go away too. The case was closed after 3 months. The lead detective suddenly retired with a very generous pension. Bought a vacation home in the Bahamas that a cop shouldn't be able to afford on a government salary. Dom stood and walked to the window, mind racing as he processed these revelations. So we're not just dealing with financial fraud and a twisted relationship. We might be looking at something much darker. Jace nodded grimly. The Maddox family has been burying Silas's crimes for years. Who knows how deep this goes? And Betrayal? Dom asked, his back still to Jace. Was she involved in any of this? Jace hesitated. That's complicated. I found emails showing she knew about at least some of Silas's financial misconduct. She helped hide documents from auditors. But regarding the women, he paused. There's no direct evidence she knew anything. But she was Silas's alibi the night Catherine Wilson disappeared. Dom turned back to face Jace. She lied for him. She claimed they were together at the family's Hamptons house all weekend. Staff confirmed it, but the staff works for Nolan Maddox. Dom finished the thought. They'd say whatever he told them to say. Jace nodded. Exactly. Dom returned to his desk, gathering the documents into a pile. This is good work, but we need more. Concrete evidence. Not just suspicious circumstances. About people digging deeper, following money trails, interviewing former Maddox employees who might talk with the right incentives. Dom's phone buzzed with a notification. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Brielle's trying to get into the building. Security stopped her in the lobby. What do you want to do? Dom considered for a moment. Send her up. I want to see what she has to say now that she's had time to craft her story. You sure that's wise? Probably not, Dom admitted. But I want to look her in the eyes when I ask her about Catherine Wilson and Amanda Reeves. Jace looked uncertain, but nodded. I'll tell security to let her through. Want me to stay? No. This conversation needs to be private, but stay close. After Jace left, Dom gathered the most damning documents and placed them in his desk drawer. Then he straightened his tie and steeled himself. The woman he had thought he loved was a stranger to him now. A puzzle piece in a larger, darker picture he was only beginning to understand. 10 minutes later, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Calloway, Ms. Maddox is here to see you. Send her in. The door opened, and Brielle stepped into his office. She looked different from the broken woman at the wedding, composed, determined, dressed impeccably in a tailored charcoal suit that projected strength. Only the redness around her eyes hinted at sleepless nights. Dom, she said, her voice steady. Thank you for seeing me. Let's skip the pleasantries, Dom replied coldly. What do you want? Brielle closed the door behind her and approached his desk, not sitting until Dom gestured to the chair across from him. I came to talk sense into you, she said, setting her designer handbag on the floor beside her. What happened at the wedding was inexcusable. I understand why you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover it, Dom replied. I know. She looked down at her hands, then back up at him with glistening eyes. Dom, I was manipulated. Silas, He's always had this hold over me. Since our parents married when I was 15, he's been there influencing me, controlling aspects of my life I didn't even realize. Dom leaned back in his chair, studying her. That's your explanation? That poor little Brielle was manipulated by her big bad stepbrother? You're 29 years old, Brielle. A grown woman who made her own choices. It's not that simple, she insisted, leaning forward. You don't know what he's like behind closed doors, the pressure he can exert, the way he thinks he owns me. And yet you invited him into your bed. Into our bed. Dom corrected with disgust. Not exactly the behavior of someone trying to break free from control. Brielle winced. I tried to end it so many times. When I met you, I thought I finally could. You were different, strong, independent, everything Silas isn't. I genuinely fell in love with you, Dom. Dom laughed without humor. Love? You let that man poison our relationship before it even began. The night before our engagement party, you were with him. 2 days before our wedding, you were with him. That's not love, Brielle. That's betrayal in its purest form. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm not denying what I did was wrong. I'm trying to explain that there's more to this story. Oh, I know there's more, Dom said, leaning forward. Much more. Like what happened to Catherine Wilson. Brielle's face went pale. What? Silas's former fiancée. The one who conveniently disappeared before their wedding. The one you provided an alibi for. She shook her head, confusion apparent in her expression. Catherine killed herself. She left a note. Did she? Or was that another Maddox family cover-up? What are you talking about? Brielle's voice trembled. Silas was devastated when she died. Was he? Or was he relieved that she couldn't expose whatever she discovered about him? Dom pressed. This is crazy. Brielle stood up, pacing the office. You're making wild accusations based on what? Gossip? Conspiracy theories. Dom opened his drawer and pulled out the police report. And Amanda Reeves? Another coincidence. Brielle stared at the document, then back at Dom. Who? The woman who accused Silas of assault before she mysteriously vanished. Ring any bells? No. Brielle shook her head firmly. I don't know anyone by that name. Dom studied her reaction carefully. Either she was telling the truth, or she was a better actress than he'd given her credit for. Your family has a pattern, Brielle. Problems disappear, sometimes literally when they threaten the Maddox name. She returned to her chair, sinking into it as the color drained from her face. Dom, I don't know what you think you've uncovered, but you're wrong. My family isn't perfect, but they're not criminals. Evidence suggests otherwise. Dom closed the folder. So which is it, Brielle? Are you a victim of manipulation or a willing participant in your family's corruption? She reached across the desk, trying to touch his hand. Dom pulled back. Dom, please. I was manipulated. I came here because despite everything, I love you. We can fix this. Dom studied her, then leaned forward, voice ice cold. Love? You let that man poison our marriage before it even started. You chose him. Now live with it. Dom, you're a relic of my past, Brielle, and I don't look back. Something shifted in her expression, the vulnerability hardening into something colder, more calculated. The tears didn't quite dry up, but they seemed less genuine now. You'll regret this, she said quietly. I regret ever loving you. Dom replied without hesitation. Brielle stood, gathering her bag. You think you know my family? You don't know anything. You're poking a bear, Dom. A very powerful bear with very sharp claws. Is that a threat? It's a warning, she replied. For old time's sake. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. You were right about one thing. I did choose Silas. Because at the end of the day, blood, or in our case, family is thicker than anything else. Even love. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving Dom alone with the evidence of a family's dark secrets and the echo of a warning he had no intention of heeding. The confrontation with Brielle left Dom unsettled. Not because of any lingering feelings those had been incinerated the moment he'd discovered her betrayal, but because of the subtle shift he'd witnessed in her demeanor. The mask had slipped, revealing something darker beneath the tears, and pleased, he wondered how much she truly knew about Silas's past, about the women who had vanished after crossing paths with the Maddox family. The uncertainty gnawed at him as he worked through the evening, reviewing contracts and financial reports with only half his attention. At 9 o'clock, his assistant knocked on his door. "Mr. Calloway, I'm heading out for the night. Is there anything else you need?" Dom looked up from his computer, realizing he'd been staring at the same spreadsheet for nearly an hour. "No, thank you, Emma. Have a good night." After she left, Dom leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. The penthouse waited for him, spacious, luxurious, and utterly empty. He'd never minded solitude before. Now, the prospect of returning to a home he'd once shared with Betrayal filled him with distaste. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The number was blocked. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Calloway." "Dom." Betrayal's voice, thick with tears. "Please don't hang up." He should have ended the call immediately. Instead, he remained silent, waiting. "I need to see you," she continued, her words slightly slurred. "There are things you need to know. Things I couldn't say in your office." "We have nothing more to discuss," Dom replied coldly. "You're wrong. Please, Dom, meet me at our spot. Just 1 hour of your time." Our spot was a small rooftop bar in Brooklyn where they'd had their first date. The sentimentality of her choice only hardened his resolve. "Goodbye, Betrayal." "Wait." Her voice rose in panic. "It's about Silas and the women." "You were right, there's more to those stories. I have proof." Dom paused, his interest reluctantly piqued. "What kind of proof?" "Not over the phone." "Please, Dom." 1 hour. "For the man I thought you were." The line went dead before he could respond. Dom set down the phone, torn between suspicion and curiosity. This could easily be a trap, an attempt to lure him into a compromising situation. The Maddox family had resources and connections throughout the city that he dialed Jace. "What's up?" Jace answered on the second ring. "Betrayal just called. Says she has proof about Silas and the missing women. Wants to meet at Sullivan's in Brooklyn." Jace's pause spoke volumes. "You're not considering it." "I am." "Dom, come on. It's obviously a setup." "Maybe," Dom conceded. "Or maybe she's genuinely scared and ready to talk. Either way, I want to know what game she's playing. At least let me come with you. I'll stay out of sight." Dom considered this. "Fine, but keep your distance unless I signal. I want her to think I came alone." "This is a bad idea," Jace muttered. "Probably," Dom agreed. "But sometimes the only way through a storm is straight ahead." An hour later, Dom entered Sullivan's rooftop bar, scanning the half-empty space for Betrayal. The place had changed since their first date, 3 years ago, renovated with sleeker furniture and mood lighting that cast blue shadows across the wooden deck. He spotted her at a corner table, nursing a glass of red wine. She wore a simple black dress, her hair loose around her shoulders the same way she'd worn it when they'd first met. The calculated nostalgia wasn't lost on Dom. She looked up as he approached, relief flooding her features. "You came. I've got 30 minutes, Dom replied, remaining standing. "Talk. Please sit." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Would you like a drink?" "I'm not here for pleasantries, Betrayal. You said you have proof about Silas." "Show me." She glanced around nervously. "Not here. It's in my car." Dom's suspicions immediately flared. "Then why arrange to meet at a bar?" "Because I needed a public place," she whispered. "I think I'm being followed. Silas knows I took something from his study. Something he'd kill to get back." "And what exactly is this something?" Betrayal leaned closer. "A journal. Catherine's journal. She gave it to me for safekeeping right before she disappeared. I never read it. Silas convinced me it was her private thoughts, that reading it would be disrespectful to her memory. But now you've read it," Dom guessed. She nodded. "After what you said today about her disappearance not being suicide, I dug it out. Dom, the thing she wrote about Silas, about my father. She was scared. She found financial records, proof of fraud on a massive scale. And she mentioned other women, women who threatened to expose them." Dom studied her face, searching for signs of deception. "Why come to me with this? Why not the police?" Betrayal laughed bitterly. "The police? Half the force is in my father's pocket. The other half wouldn't touch a Maddox case with a 10-foot pole. No, I need someone with resources, someone they can't intimidate or buy off. And suddenly that's me? The man you betrayed and humiliated. You're the only person I know who isn't afraid of them," she admitted. And despite everything, I know you're a good man. You wouldn't let them get away with this, not if what I suspect is true. Dom remained skeptical. So where's this journal now? Like I said, in my car. Down in the parking garage. Convenient. Brielle's eyes flashed with irritation. You think this is a trap? Fine. She reached in her purse and pulled out her phone, scrolling through it before handing it to Dom. These are photos I took of key pages. Not all of it, but enough to show I'm telling the truth. Dom took the phone, examining the images. The pages showed handwritten entries, dated 5 years ago. He skimmed the content, expressions of fear, mentions of S, and his explosive temper, references to financial documents that didn't match official records. The last entry was particularly disturbing. If anything happens to me, it wasn't suicide. No matter what they say. S knows I've copied the files. He was different today, calm, too calm. Said we'd work it out at the lake house this weekend. I don't trust him. I've given B this journal for safekeeping, though she thinks it's just for sentimental reasons. She's too loyal to him to see the truth, but she's the only one I can trust, even a little. I've hidden copies of the evidence elsewhere as insurance. The entry ended abruptly. Dom handed back the phone, his mind racing. This could be fabricated. It's not, Brielle insisted. I can prove it. The original is in my car, along with a USB drive containing files Catherine left. Financial records, emails, photos, evidence of years of fraud and worse. Dom remained silent, weighing his options. Either Brielle was telling the truth, which meant the Maddox family was even more dangerous than he'd suspected, or this was an elaborate trap. Why the change of heart, Brielle? This morning you were defending your family. She looked down at her barely touched wine. Because I realized something after I left your office. I've been complicit, not just with Silas and us, but with everything. I turned a blind eye because it was easier than facing the truth about my family. And Silas? You expect me to believe you've suddenly broken free of his influence. It's not sudden, she said quietly. It's been coming for a long time. Meeting you was the beginning. Loving you made me want to be better. But Silas, he's always known exactly what to say, what to do to pull me back in. Dom scoffed. Save the romantic revisionism. Actions speak louder than words, and yours have been shouting for years. I deserve that, she acknowledged. But right now, this isn't about us, Dom. It's about justice for women who might have been killed to protect the Maddox name. The sincerity in her voice was convincing. But Dom had been fooled by her sincerity before. If what you're saying is true, you're putting yourself in danger by coming to me. I know, she admitted, but I'm already in danger. Silas knows the journal is missing. It's only a matter of time before he realizes I took it. She reached across the table, tentatively touching his hand. This time, Dom didn't pull away immediately. Please, Dom, come with me to my car. Look at the evidence yourself. Then decide what to do with it. Dom withdrew his hand and stood up. Fine, let's go. Relief flooded her features. Thank you. They left the bar together, Brielle leading the way to the elevator that would take them to the underground parking garage. Dom sent a quick text to Jace, following her to her car in the garage. Stand by. The elevator doors closed, leaving them alone in the small space. Brielle stood close enough that Dom could smell her perfume, the same scent she'd worn throughout their relationship. A calculated choice, no doubt. Thank you for trusting me, she said softly. I don't trust you, Dom replied bluntly. But I want the truth, whatever it is. The elevator reached the garage level, and the doors slid open. The concrete space was dimly lit and mostly empty at this hour. Brielle's sleek Mercedes was parked in a far corner, away from other vehicles, another calculated choice. As they approached the car, Brielle dug through her purse for her keys. The journal is in a hidden compartment under the passenger seat. Silas doesn't know about it. Dom remained alert, scanning the garage for any sign of movement or ambush. Something felt off, but he couldn't pinpoint what. Brielle unlocked the car and opened the passenger door. Here, you'll need to reach under the seat. There's a small lever that releases the compartment. Dom hesitated. Get it yourself. She frowned. Still don't trust me? Not even slightly. Brielle sighed and bent down, reaching under the seat. Fine. It's right here. She emerged with a leather-bound journal and a USB drive. See? Just like I said. She held them out to Dom. Everything you need to bring them down. Dom reached for the items, studying them. The journal looked authentic, worn edges, faded ink on the pages he could see. As he took them from her, Brielle stepped closer. Dom, she whispered, her eyes filled with unshed tears. I really did love you. In my own way. Before he could respond, she leaned in and kissed him. For a split second, muscle memory almost betrayed him. Then reality crashed back, and Dom pulled away sharply. No, he said firmly. That chapter is closed, Brielle. She stepped back, something hardening in her expression. I had to try. A car engine roared to life nearby. Dom turned to see a black SUV speeding toward them, headlights off. Instinctively, he grabbed Brielle and pulled her aside as the vehicle screeched to a halt beside her Mercedes. Two men in dark clothing emerged, moving with purpose. One aimed directly for Dom, the other for Brielle. Dom, she screamed, the fear in her voice sounding genuine for the first time all night. The larger man reached Dom first, swinging a punch that Dom barely dodged. His combat training 3 years of mixed martial arts after a client had been targeted by a competitor kicked in. Dom countered with a sharp jab to the attacker's throat, followed by a knee to his midsection. The man staggered back but didn't fall. From the corner of his eye, Dom saw the second man grab Brielle, who struggled and screamed. Help me, she cried out. Dom, please. Dom hesitated for a critical second, torn between intervening and self-preservation. That moment of indecision cost him. His attacker recovered and charged again, this time landing a solid blow to Dom's ribs. Pain exploded through his torso. Dom stumbled back against Brielle's car, gasping for breath. The attacker pressed his advantage, grabbing Dom by the throat and slamming him against the vehicle. The journal, the man growled. Give it to me. Dom clawed at the hand, crushing his windpipe. Go to hell. The pressure increased. Spots danced in Dom's vision. Then, suddenly, the pressure vanished. The man's eyes widened in surprise as he crumpled to the ground. Behind him stood Jace, holding what looked like a stun gun. Told you it was a trap, Jace said grimly. Dom coughed, massaging his throat. Brielle. They both turned to see the second attacker, shoving Brielle into the back of the SUV. She wasn't struggling anymore. Her movements were oddly cooperative, almost synchronized with her supposed captor. She's in on it. Dom realized aloud, a S if hearing him. Brielle turned and met his gaze across the garage. The fear was gone from her expression, replaced by cold determination. She nodded once, nodding goodbye, but an acknowledgement that the game had changed. The SUV's door slammed shut, and the vehicle peeled away, tires squealing on the concrete. Should we go after them? Jace asked, already pulling out his phone. Dom shook his head, still clutching the journal and USB drive. No, let them go. We got what we came for. You sure that's what they were after? Positive. Brielle staged the whole thing, the tearful confession, the evidence, the kiss. All to distract me while her accomplices moved in. Dom examined the journal more carefully. The question is, why go to such lengths for this? Maybe because it's real, Jace suggested. Genuine evidence they can't afford to have exposed. Dom nodded slowly. Let's find out. And let's not do it here. As they walked toward Jace's car, Dom glanced back at the unconscious attacker. What about him? Jace shrugged. Anonymous tip to the police? Though he'll probably be gone before they arrive. No, Dom decided. Let's take him with us. He might have answers we need. Jace raised an eyebrow. Kidnapping now? That's a felony, Dom. So is attempted murder, Dom countered, his throat still raw from the attack. And I'm not letting the Maddox family dictate the rules of this game anymore. Together, they dragged the unconscious man to Jace's SUV, securing him with zip ties from the emergency kit in the trunk. As they drove away from the garage, Dom flipped through Catherine Wilson's journal, each page confirming his worst suspicions about the family he'd almost married in it. He had evidence, now evidence, that could destroy not just Silas, but the entire Maddox empire. The question was how to use it without getting himself killed in the process. The next morning brought a barrage of attacks from the Maddox family, just as Dom had anticipated. 3 of his major clients received anonymous emails detailing fabricated ethics violations at Callaway Tech. Two financial publications ran stories questioning the company's latest quarterly report, citing unnamed sources close to the company. By noon, Callaway tech stock had dropped 8%. Dom observed the chaos from his office, watching the numbers fall on his monitor with an eerie calm that unsettled his executive team. They had gathered in his conference room, faces tense with concern. "We need to issue a statement," his PR director insisted. "Refute these allegations immediately. The SEC is requesting clarification on our Q3 financials," added his CFO. "This could trigger an audit." "My phone hasn't stopped ringing," the head of client relations reported. "Henderson and Wicker are threatening to pull their contracts." Dom let them vent their concerns, listening without interruption. When they finally fell silent, he stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "The Maddox family is behind this," he said simply. "They're retaliating for what happened at the wedding." His team exchanged uncomfortable glances. Everyone knew about the wedding disaster. It had been impossible to keep quiet with so many high-profile guests, but this was the first time Dom had addressed it directly with his executive team. "Sir," his CFO ventured, "with all due respect, that's a personal matter. This is business." "Not to them," Dom replied, turning back to face the room. "To the Maddox family, everything is interconnected business, personal relationships, power. They don't compartmentalize like we do." "So what's our strategy?" asked Jace, who had been quiet until now. Dom returned to his seat at the head of the table. "We fight back. Not defensively, but offensively. Issue the standard denials to the press. Reassure clients individually, comply with any SEC requests." But that's just the surface response. He opened a folder and removed several documents, passing them around the table. "This is what we're really going to do." His team reviewed the papers with varying expressions of shock and disbelief. "This is aggressive," the legal director finally said. "Possibly actionable." "It's entirely factual," Dom countered. "Everything in those documents has been verified by multiple sources. The Maddox family has been operating in ethical gray areas for years, sometimes crossing well into the black. We're simply bringing that to light by targeting their largest clients," the PR director noted. "This could be seen as corporate sabotage." "It's called accountability," Dom corrected, "and it's long overdue." The debate continued for another hour, with Dom addressing each concern methodically. By the end, his team had reluctantly aligned with the strategy, not because they fully agreed, but because they trusted his leadership. As the meeting dispersed, Jace lingered behind. "You're playing with fire, Dom." "I didn't start this fire," Dom replied, "but I intend to control how it burns." "And our guest from last night? Any useful information?" Dom's expression darkened. "Not yet. He's being stubborn." "Dom, I'm not crossing any lines, Jace. Just keeping him comfortable until he's ready to talk. We've got people watching him round the clock." Jace didn't look convinced, but he nodded. "The journal and USB drive? Still being analyzed. The financial records match what we already suspected: systematic fraud, client funds being redirected, books cooked to hide the discrepancies. But there's more. Personal records, photos, locations. Catherine Wilson was building a case. A case she never got a present," Jace noted grimly. "Exactly." Dom's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He checked the screen and frowned. "It's Henderson, our biggest client," Jace reminded him unnecessarily. Dom answered, putting the call on speaker. "James, good to hear from you. Is it?" Henderson's voice came through, tense and formal. "Because I'm not calling with good news, Dominic. I assume this is about the rumors circulating today. Not just rumors. I've received documentation suggesting your company has been falsifying client performance metrics. Very specific documentation." Dom exchanged a glance with Jace. "Manufactured documentation, James. We've been targeted by individuals with personal vendettas against me. I'd be happy to walk you through our actual performance reports." "That won't be necessary," Henderson cut in. "The Maddox Group has already offered to take over our portfolio at significantly reduced rates. There is the real play, not just to damage Callaway Tech's reputation, but to poach its clients." "James," Dom kept his voice level, "you and I have worked together for 7 years. In that time, We've increased your portfolio value by 327%. Does it not strike you as suspicious that these allegations emerge the same week Maddox offers you a deal? Business is business, Dominic. Nothing personal. This is entirely personal, and you know it. Nolan Maddox is using you as a pawn in his game against me. Henderson's sigh was audible through the speaker. Look, I don't know what happened between you and a Maddox girl, and frankly, I don't care. But I can't afford to be caught in the crossfire of a personal feud. So you'll jump ship based on unsubstantiated claims. I'm giving you 48 hours to disprove these allegations. After that, I have to protect my interests. The call ended abruptly. Dom set down his phone, his expression unreadable. They're moving faster than we anticipated, Jace observed. Yes, Dom agreed, which means we need to accelerate our response. The plan we just outlined gives us 2 weeks to build our case against Maddox. If Henderson's deadline is any indication, we don't have that kind of time. Dom nodded, thinking. Then we change tactics. Instead of going after all their vulnerabilities simultaneously, we focus on the most damaging one first. The missing women, Jace guessed. Exactly. Financial fraud can be explained away, settlements reached, records amended. But 2 missing women linked to Silas Maddox? That's not so easily dismissed. Dom picked up his phone again, dialing a number from memory. It's time to talk to Catherine Wilson's family. 3 days later, the first strike against the Maddox family went public. Not through traditional media channels, those could be influenced by Nolan's connections, but through a carefully crafted social media campaign launched by a seemingly independent advocacy group for missing women. The campaign featured Catherine Wilson's story prominently, alongside detailed timelines, witness statements that had been overlooked in the original investigation, and pointed questions about why the case had been closed so abruptly. It didn't directly accuse Silas or the Maddox family, but the implications were clear to anyone paying attention. Dom watched the campaign gain traction from his penthouse, monitoring social media metrics and news aggregators. By mid-afternoon, #JusticeForCatherine was trending in New York. By evening, several legitimate news outlets had picked up the story, running segments that revisited the suspicious circumstances of her disappearance. Jace arrived at the penthouse just as Dom was finishing a call with Catherine's brother, who had become the family spokesperson for the renewed investigation. It's working, Jace announced without preamble, setting his laptop on the coffee table. 3 major clients have called to reaffirm their commitment to Callaway Tech. Henderson is wavering, wants to meet in person tomorrow. Dom nodded, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. And the Maddox response? That's the interesting part. Total silence so far. No statements, no denials, not even through their usual PR channels. Jace accepted the offered glass. It's like they've gone to ground. They're regrouping, Dom said, planning their counterattack. This isn't over by a long shot. As if on cue, Dom's phone rang. Unknown number. Callaway, he answered cautiously. You think you're clever, don't you? Nolan Maddox's voice was cold, controlled, but with an undercurrent of fury. Using a dead girl's family for your vendetta. Dom switched to speaker so Jace could hear. I'm merely supporting a family's right to know what happened to their daughter. Something you actively prevented 5 years ago. You have no idea what you're meddling with, Dominic. Catherine Wilson was mentally unstable. Her death was a tragedy, but it was suicide, plain and simple. Was it? Because we have her journal that suggests otherwise, and financial records that show exactly what she discovered about your company's practices before she died. A pause. What journal? The one Betrayal gave me. Didn't she tell you about our little meeting? Another longer pause. You're bluffing. Am I? Would you like me to quote passages? Or maybe I should just upload the entire thing online, along with the USB drive full of evidence Catherine compiled. If you had anything concrete, you'd have gone to the authorities. Dom laughed without humor. You mean the authorities you've been paying off for years? No, Nolan, I've learned from Catherine's mistakes. Public exposure is much safer than private accusations. You've made a serious error in judgment. Nolan's voice had dropped to a near whisper. Coming after my family like this. Your family came after me first, Dom reminded him. I'm just better at the game. This isn't a game. Nolan snapped, his composure finally cracking. "This is my legacy you're threatening. My son's future. Your son should have thought about his future before he started sleeping with his stepsister and making women disappear." The line went silent for so long that Dom thought Nolan might have hung up. Then, with chilling clarity, "You will regret this, Dominic. I promise you that." The call ended. Dom set down the phone, unfazed by the threat. "He's rattled," Jace observed. "Good. Rattled people make mistakes. He's also dangerous. We should increase security." Dom nodded in agreement. "Already done. But Nolan won't move against me directly, not yet. He's too calculating for that. He'll try to undermine the campaign first, discredit Catherine's family or the evidence. And when that fails, then we move to phase 2, Dom replied, pulling up a document on his tablet. "Amanda Reeves." Jace frowned. "We have even less on her disappearance." "For now," Dom agreed. "But our investigators are closing in on a witness, a former security guard at Maddox Investments who was on duty the night of the alleged assault. He left the company abruptly afterward, moved to Arizona. Suddenly came into enough money to buy a small ranch. Hush money, most likely. But guilt has a way of festering over time. Our people think he might be willing to talk now for the right incentives." Jace studied his friend carefully. "Dom, I'm with you on this, but I have to ask, is this still about what Betrayal did? Or has it become something bigger?" Dom considered the question seriously. "Both," he finally admitted. "Yes, I want justice for her betrayal. But this isn't just about me anymore. 2 women are missing, possibly dead, because they crossed paths with Silas Maddox. Who knows how many others have been silenced or intimidated? The Maddox family has operated with impunity for too long. So it's not just revenge. It's accountability," Dom clarified, "with a healthy side of revenge." Jace raised his glass. "Then here's to accountability." They drank in silence, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows as night descended on New York, a city where powerful men like Nolan Maddox had always made their own rules. Until now, 6 weeks after the wedding disaster, Dom stood in the vast ballroom of the Covington Hotel, watching New York's elite mingle and network. The annual Technology Innovation Gala was the industry's premier event, bringing together tech giants, venture capitalists, and influencers for an evening of carefully orchestrated philanthropy and deal-making. Dom had hosted a table at the gala for 7 consecutive years. This year, however, his presence had a different purpose. Dressed impeccably in a custom tuxedo, he moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries while his eyes continually scanned the entrance. "They're here," Jace murmured beside him, nodding toward the doorway. Dom turned to see Nolan and Vanessa Maddox entering the ballroom, followed closely by Silas and, surprisingly, Betrayal. The Maddox family moved as a unit, heads held high despite the whispers that followed in their wake. The hashtag Justice for Catherine campaign had gained international attention over the past weeks. And although the family had issued a statement denying any involvement, the court of public opinion had already begun to turn against them. "Brave of them to show up," Dom commented. "Or desperate. Both, probably," Jace replied. "Their stock dropped another 4 points today. 3 board members have resigned in the last week. They need to project normalcy." Dom nodded, watching Betrayal lean close to whisper something to Silas. She wore a dark green gown that hugged her figure, her hair swept up elegantly. Nothing in her demeanor suggested a woman under stress, no hint of the tears and desperation she'd displayed in the parking garage weeks before. "Is everything in place?" Dom asked quietly. Jace nodded. "FBI agents are positioned at all exits. The evidence has been verified and warrants secured. They're just waiting for your signal. And our insurance policy, ready to go live at your word. Once it's out there, it can't be buried again." Dom took a deep breath. Tonight was the culmination of weeks of meticulous planning, of evidence gathering and witness testimony, of building an irrefutable case against the Maddox family. He felt no joy in what was about to happen, only a grim satisfaction that justice would finally be served. "Let's proceed as planned." Dom made his way to the stage as the evening's formal program began. As the gala's platinum sponsor, he had been allotted time to address the gathering. The master of ceremonies introduced him with glowing praise for Callaway Tech's innovations and philanthropy. Dom approached the microphone, smiling at the assembled guests. He caught Nolan's eye across the room, the older man's expression a mask of polite attention that didn't reach his cold eyes. "Thank you for that generous introduction," Dom began. "It's an honor to be among so many brilliant minds working to shape our technological future." He delivered the expected remarks about innovation and social responsibility, watching the audience nod along with practiced interest. Then, as planned, he shifted gears. "Tonight, I'd like to take a moment to recognize some very special guests in our midst, the Maddox family." A spotlight swung to illuminate their table. Nolan's face remained impassive, but Vanessa straightened with visible discomfort. Silas glared openly at Dom, while Brielle maintained a practiced smile. "The Maddox name has long been associated with financial power in this city," Dom continued. "Their influence extends throughout our institution's banking, real estate, law enforcement." Murmurs rippled through the crowd at the unusual direction of his speech. "But tonight, I'd like us to consider the responsibility that comes with such influence. The accountability that should accompany power." Dom gestured, and the large screens around the ballroom flickered to life. "Let's take a moment to appreciate their contributions to society." The screens displayed financial documents, complex spreadsheets, bank transfers, client account records. To most observers, they would appear as meaningless numbers, but to the financial professionals in the room, the patterns were unmistakable. "What you're seeing is evidence of systematic fraud spanning 15 years at Maddox Investments," Dom explained calmly. "Client funds diverted to offshore accounts. Books manipulated to hide losses. Regulatory agencies misled." Nolan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is outrageous. Turn that off immediately." Dom continued as if he hadn't heard. "But financial crimes, while serious, pale in comparison to what else we've uncovered." The screens changed to show photographs of Catherine Wilson and Amanda Reeves, alongside police reports and timeline graphics. Two women, both connected to Silas Maddox, both who discovered financial irregularities, both who disappeared under suspicious circumstances. The ballroom had gone deathly quiet. Even the waitstaff had frozen in place, watching the drama unfold. "Catherine Wilson didn't commit suicide," Dom stated firmly. "Her journal, which has been verified by forensic experts, details her discovery of fraud at Maddox Investments and her fear for her safety in the days before her disappearance." The screens showed excerpts from the journal, Catherine's handwriting enlarged for all to see. Amanda Reeves didn't simply leave town after withdrawing her assault complaint against Silas Maddox. She was last seen entering the Maddox building for a settlement discussion. She never emerged. Silas had risen now, too, his face contorted with rage. "This is slander. You have no proof of anything." "Oh, but I do," Dom replied calmly. "From multiple sources, including witnesses who were paid for their silence, but have now come forward." The doors at the back of the ballroom opened, and several men in dark suits entered. FBI agents, moving with quiet purpose toward the Maddox table. And so do federal authorities. Nolan finally seemed to register what was happening. He turned to flee, but found his path blocked by two agents. "Nolan Maddox," one announced clearly, "you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy related to the disappearances of Catherine Wilson and Amanda Reeves." Simultaneously, other agents approached Silas. "Silas Maddox, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, assault, and suspicion of involvement in the disappearances of Catherine Wilson and Amanda Reeves." The ballroom erupted into chaos, guests rising from their seats, cameras flashing, voices raised in shock and confusion. Vanessa collapsed in her chair, her composure finally shattered. Brielle stood frozen, watching as her father and brother were handcuffed. Dom observed it all from the stage, his expression grave but determined. This wasn't celebration, it was justice, cold and necessary. Jace appeared at his side. "Time to go. The press will be all over this in minutes." Dom nodded, stepping away from the microphone. As they moved toward a side exit, He caught Brielle's eye across the room. She stood alone now, abandoned by her family, her face a mask of shock and what might have been fear. For a moment, something tugged at Dom, not sympathy exactly, but recognition of the seismic shift in her world. Then he remembered her betrayal, her manipulation, her calculated tears in the parking garage. Whatever happened to Brielle Maddox now was a consequence of her own choices. Dom turned away and followed Jace out of the ballroom point 3 days after the arrests. Dom sat in his office reviewing the media coverage that had exploded across every platform. The Maddox scandal dominated headlines, with new details emerging hourly as investigators dug deeper into the family's business dealings and personal lives. Nolan and Silas remained in custody, denied bail due to flight risk. Vanessa had retreated to their Hampton estate, refusing all interview requests. And Brielle, Dom realized he hadn't seen her name mentioned in any recent reports. After the initial shock of the arrests, she had seemingly vanished from public view. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Calloway, his assistant's voice sounded tense. Brielle Maddox is here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent. Dom paused, surprised. Send her in. A moment later, the door opened, and Brielle entered. She looked nothing like the polished socialite from the gala. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face bare of makeup, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a plain sweater. The transformation was startling, as if her family's fall had stripped away her outer shell. Dom, she said simply, standing just inside the doorway. Brielle. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. This is unexpected. She sat, her movements stiff and controlled. I imagine it is. Why are you here? Brielle met his gaze directly, her eyes red-rimmed, but dry. To concede defeat, I suppose. You've won. Dom leaned back in his chair, studying her. This wasn't a game, Brielle, wasn't it? A bitter smile curved her lips. From where I'm standing, it looks exactly like a game of chess. You sacrificed your queen, our marriage, to ultimately checkmate the king and his knight. Your father and brother broke the law. Multiple laws. They're facing justice for their actions, not because of some elaborate revenge plot. But it was revenge, she insisted. At least partly. Don't deny it, Dom. I know you too well. He couldn't argue with that. Why are you really here, Brielle? Surely not just to acknowledge my victory. She sighed, tension visibly draining from her shoulders. I don't know, honestly. Maybe I needed to see you one last time. Maybe I needed closure. Closure, Dom repeated skeptically. Yes, closure. A chance to say what needs to be said before I disappear. That caught his attention. Disappear? Brielle nodded. I'm leaving New York. Tonight. There's nothing left for me here. My family's empire is crumbling. Our name is toxic, and She faltered for the first time. I have my own sins to account for. Dom remained silent, waiting for her to continue. I did love you, Dom, she said quietly, but I did love you in my own broken way. Dom studied her, searching for signs of manipulation, the calculated vulnerability she had displayed in the past. But all he saw was exhaustion and defeat. Love shouldn't be broken, Brielle. It shouldn't involve betrayal and lies. I know, she acknowledged. I never knew how to love properly. Maybe because of how I was raised. Maybe because of Silas and his influence over me. But that's not an excuse. Just a sad reality I have to live with. Where will you go? She shrugged. Does it matter? Somewhere I can start over. Become someone new. Running away won't erase what happened. No, she agreed. But staying here, watching the aftermath of my family's destruction, won't help me become better either. Dom found himself in unfamiliar territory, neither angry nor sympathetic, but somewhere in the hollow space between. What about the investigations? The authorities will want to question you further. I've told them everything I know, she said. Signed all the statements, turned over all the documents I had access to. My lawyers will handle anything else. She stood, smoothing her jeans with a gesture that seemed incongruously formal with her casual attire. I should go. Thank you for seeing me. Dom rose as well, unsure of the proper protocol for this strange, final meeting. Brielle, don't, she interrupted gently. Don't say you're sorry, or that you forgive me. or any of those things people say when relationships end. We both know better. He nodded, respecting her directness. Fair enough. She turned to leave, then paused at the door, looking back at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You've won. But I did love you, Dom. Dom felt no triumph in this moment, no vindication. Just the hollow echo of what might have been in another life, with another version of the woman before him. No, Brielle, you love power, and now you have none. The words weren't meant to wound, merely to state a truth they both understood. Brielle didn't flinch or argue. She simply nodded once, accepting the assessment. Goodbye, Dom. Goodbye, Brielle. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and Dom was left with the strange certainty that he would never see her again. Not because she was running from justice, but because she was running from herself, from the person she had become in the toxic environment of the Maddox family. He returned to his desk, staring at the headlines still splashed across his computer screen: the fall of the financial dynasty, the exposure of decades of corruption, the renewed investigations into 2 missing women. Justice had been served. Truth had prevailed. Yet the victory tasted different than Dom had imagined. Not sweet, not bitter, but complex and nuanced, like the woman who had just walked out of his life for good. 1 month after the arrests of Nolan and Silas Maddox, Dom stood on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the sunset paint the Manhattan skyline in hues of gold and orange. The early autumn air carried a crispness that felt cleansing after the tumultuous summer. Behind him, the glass doors slid open, and Jace stepped out, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. Thought you might want to celebrate, he said, handing one to Dom. The news just broke. Dom accepted the glass, but didn't drink immediately. Which news? These days, it's hard to keep track of all the Maddox-related headlines. Silas took a plea deal, Jace replied. 25 years. In exchange, he's given up information about Catherine Wilson's death. Dom's expression darkened. So, it was murder. Manslaughter, technically, according to his statement. He claims they argued at the lake house. She threatened to expose the financial fraud. He pushed her. She fell and hit her head. He panicked and staged the suicide. And Amanda Reeves still maintains his innocence there, but they've reopened the case with new evidence. It doesn't look good for him. Dom nodded, finally taking a sip of his whiskey. The familiar burn felt right, somehow a reminder that some things still remained constant in a world turned upside down. And Nolan, refusing to deal. His lawyers are fighting everything, but the evidence is overwhelming. The financial crimes alone could put him away for 15 years, and that's without any connection to the disappearances. Dom turned back to the view, absorbing this information. And Brielle? Jace hesitated. No charges filed. The authorities don't believe she was directly involved in the financial fraud or the disappearances. She's cooperating as a witness. Have they located her? She's in Europe somewhere, communicating through her lawyers. Dom nodded, unsurprised. Brielle had meant what she said about disappearing. You know, Jace said carefully, you never told me what happened during her final visit. What she said. Dom considered the question. She conceded defeat. Said she was leaving to start over. That's it. She also said she loved me, Dom admitted. In her own way. Jace raised an eyebrow. And you believe that? Dom took another sip of whiskey, letting the question hang in the air between them. Did he believe Brielle had loved him? Perhaps, in the limited capacity she was capable of. But love wasn't meant to be conditional or divided. It wasn't meant to coexist with betrayal. It doesn't matter now, he finally said. Whatever she felt or didn't feel, it's in the past, where it belongs. They stood in companionable silence for a while, watching the city transition from day to night, lights flickering on in thousands of windows below. So, Jace broke the silence. What's next for Dominic Calloway? The company's stock has rebounded. The Maddox threat is neutralized. You've accomplished everything you set out to do. Dom considered the question seriously. For months, his focus had been singular: expose the truth, bring down those who had wronged him, seek justice for the women who couldn't speak for themselves. Now that it was essentially accomplished, what remained? A better future, he said finally. One without liars and parasites. That's pretty vague for a man who usually has 5-year plans with quarterly benchmarks. Jace observed with a slight smile. Dom chuckled, the sound surprising even himself. It had been a long time since he'd found anything genuinely amusing. Fair point. Let's get specific then. He turned to face his friend, gesturing with his glass. Callaway Tech expands into ethical investing. We create a platform that vets financial institutions through a transparency framework, something that would have exposed the Maddox fraud years ago if it had existed. Jace nodded, interest sparking in his eyes. I like it. Protection through information. Exactly. And on a personal level, Dom paused, realizing he hadn't thought this far ahead. I think I need to relearn who Dominic Callaway is without the shadow of betrayal hanging over him. Sounds suspiciously like personal growth, Jace teased. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain. They clinked glasses, the sound clear and promising in the evening air. To justice served, Jace offered. And lessons learned, Dom added. As nights settled over the city, Dom felt something shift inside him, not forgiveness exactly, but release. The anger that had fueled him for months had served its purpose. Justice had been achieved. The truth had been revealed. He didn't regret the path he'd taken, the hardness he'd maintained, the uncompromising pursuit of accountability. But now, standing on the threshold of what came next, Dom recognized that moving forward required something different than the single-minded focus that had driven his pursuit of the Maddox family. That IT required openness to possibility. It required trust, not given blindly as before, but carefully, with eyes wide open. Most of all, it required the courage to believe that not everyone was like Betrayal, that genuine love without manipulation existed, that loyalty without ulterior motives was possible. Dom wasn't ready for that yet. The wounds were still too fresh, the memories too vivid. But for the first time since discovering Betrayal's betrayal, he could envision a future where those wounds no longer defined him. He took a deep breath of the cool night air, feeling it fill his lungs with possibilities. Whatever came next, he would face it on his terms, wiser, stronger, and free from the weight of lies that had nearly crushed him. Dom Callaway had not just survived betrayal, he had conquered it, and he would never be played again.